we have to get to our redemption segment, or was it really that bad? Now, as I said at the beginning of this podcast, John, thank you for waiting until the middle of my speech to open your beer. As I said at the beginning of the segment, this movie isn't necessarily considered a bad movie. It is controversial, though. So
I just find it funny that Jeff hasn't noticed we've been doing that for 33 episodes.
But I just thought this was a game to make us drink too much at the end of this, so that we end this podcast and go back to our regular lives intoxicated, since we're not in person. But anyway, we're gonna talk about Prometheus, Ridley Scott. This cast, I'm gonna get the cast right off the bat. Okay,
what a cast.
So you've got Noomi Rapace is the lead of the movie, and she was the original girl with the dragon tattoo in Sweden. So she had 1, 2, 3, bang, bang, bang in Sweden. And then this was supposed to be her breakout into America. You have Michael Fassbender, who was just exploding into the American scene. He had done Inglourious Bastards in 2009. And he'd done a couple other incredible indies. And 12 Years a Slave came out not long after this. So he's his first got... not to just talk about the movie, but he got an Oscar nomination. Anyway, it was right on the brink of Michael Fassbender becoming an international it guy. Right around, I guess X-Men was 2010. So it was right after X-Men. You have Charlize Theron, obviously. You have Idris Elba, who Luther was out, but still the American mainstream. He was like right on the brink. Guy Pearce was the lone, like, oh, I've been doing this for 40 years guy. You have Sean Harris, who, if you've listened to our podcast, you know I will never say anything about it. I love Sean Harris. You have Rafe Spall.
Sean Harris.
Yeah.
What are you talking about?
You have Rafe Spall and Benedict Wong, who you may know as Wong in Doctor Strange and the Avengers series. And then Kate Dickie, who somehow has been on this podcast a lot. She was in The Witch, and she was also in Game of Thrones as Lysa Arryn, so she comes up a lot. But anyway, Prometheus, Ridley Scott, here's the pitch. Following clues to the origin of mankind, a team finds a structure on a distant moon, but they soon realize they are not alone. Ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-bum. This movie's set in the future. I forget the year. I'm going to guess 2084. I don't know why I guessed that, but it's like in the near future. And they travel to space. They're in pods. They wake up. They throw up. They've been asleep for 3 years. And now they're there and they are investigating this thing. And I think that the pitch is, what is Jeff Bezos doing with all of our money? That's what they're doing. Because basically a trillionaire decides to fund this space mission across the universe instead of solving homelessness at home. I think that's basically what this movie's about. Because they all show up and they all get out of their chambers that they've been asleep in for 2.5 years. And they're about to literally land on a planet. And none of them know the mission. They all are like, so now that you're here, and it's like, whoa, my union contract has expired. It's like really fucking funny. Anyway, I don't even know where to start. It's Ridley Scott. It's kind of like Alien, but it's not set on Earth. It's set really far away. Is it a prequel to Alien? I don't really know. Who wants to take it from there?
I think everything he does now is a prequel to Alien, isn't it?
Yeah, I guess so.
Yeah.
Jeff Bezos wishes he was Guy Pearce's character in this movie, dude.
Yeah.
That
He's
is his
on his
dream.
way. He's on his way.
Dave, what do you think, dude? Yeah, I have a feeling you
John,
have all the notes.
Thanks for the input. Good
I
talk.
have a lot of thoughts, but I kind of want to hear you start.
Well, it's funny, like, because the thing that always threw me about this, and I've seen this a lot of times, I'll always go back to it just to see, like, you know, does it get any better? And one thing that's already, like, one thing that's buzzed me about the whole time.
Buzzed you? It buzzed you?
Yeah.
Something buzzed you? Did something buzz you? You
How strong are
motherfucker, drink your beer.
How strong are those beers you're drinking, Dave?
And something that's bugged me is that I like the opening scene. I never really got it. And so I thought, I'm going to do a search. I'm going to do a search on the internet. And I can tell you now, when you type that in, it's like typing in something that brings up 50,000 pages of porn. There are 50,000 explanations for what happens in the first scene of this movie on the internet, and they're all conflicting. I'm going with they're genetically seeding Earth theory, because they do mention that later in the film. And once I was narrowed down on that, I had a much better time watching this film.
Yeah.
This time around. It does have like almost as many scenery panning shots as The Hobbit, but that's apart from that.
Also 2012.
I
Yeah. Jeff, I think the things you were making light of are what I kind of have to just allow to happen when I'm watching this movie. There are, unlike Alien, which I really like that first movie a lot. The tone of that one, I know it's set further in the future, but everyone seems to be more prepared for the situation. It seems to have a different aspect of realism to it because of the nature of the mission and the fact that they're all on the same page. There are a few things that pull you out of this movie that you kind of have to just let yourself be like, okay, that's all right. Like the fact that they don't know what they're going to be there doing.
None of them have any of idea. And at least tell us, oh, we gave each of you $10 million to shut the fuck up. At least tell us that. At least be self-aware. I need to know that you understand that this is ridiculous. I just need to know that. Because I like the movie, but I need to know that you know.
Yeah,
you know
I mean, that's one of the ones where he relies on the mythology more than spelling it out in the script, because like
I just need one line.
These Starship crews do just sign on for a mission. They have no idea what it is half the time. They find out on the way.
But the one guy, as Sean Harris says, and nothing, I have a lot of like menial little lines, but I love announce your profession and what your profession does line. So Sean Harris says, I'm a geologist. I deal with rocks. Lines. In case, I don't know, I say, I'm a music teacher. I teach music. As if that's a line that people say in real life. But like, how hard is it if you can have a line like that in the movie? Why can't you have one line that explains how not a single person knows why they're there? And I know the movie's good, and you should be able to go with it no matter what. But you can't give me a mythology thing, because all I need is one sentence. You have to watch this. You have to get somebody who doesn't know the mythology to watch this movie. You have to do a test screening. You have the money. You just have to do it. And you need somebody who says, I have no idea what's going on.
It definitely takes liberty with how much you know. He kind of forgets that you haven't invested yourself in the alien world for 20 years or whatever.
But the movie's fine, even if you haven't seen Alien. And you know what? These are very specific movie tropes that maybe we care about because we watch 3 movies a week plus. So maybe we aren't the right people to talk about that specific thing as far as like who would like this movie. I think there's a lot of fun sci-fi things in here. But
there's always fun sci-fi thing. This is my only criticism about Ridley Scott, is that man is clearly capable of making really wonderful films. Like he knows how to make movies.
Yeah.
And yet in all of his movies, and I know that's a broad brush, but I think I'm going to say it. I think all of his movies have some moments and scenes that make you remember that you're in a movie, whether it's cheesy dialogue or just the way he cut together a certain sequence. It just feels like it feels a little forced, like it needed to be in there to present this information so that you can get to the next kick-ass sequence. I think my best example of that for this is twofold. That first scene when you meet Harris's character, and he says, I'm only in it here to make money. It's like, wow, square into a round hole. Like there was probably 2 more lines that would have been necessary to make that feel a little bit more organic. And then it immediately goes to another scene where, what's her name? The 2 protagonists, Naomi Rapace and the guy who plays Charlie, Logan Marshall Green, have a very human exchange with each other. And then they give this presentation, which again feels a little forced. So sometimes I feel like his movies go back and forth between like a realistic version of humanity and a movie. Mm-hmm. And then interspersed in that kind of thing are unbelievable visual sequences that are very like, oh my God, I'm in the hands of a master. And yet sometimes I do feel like he falls into a trap. The last 20 minutes of this movie are 3 different endings. And I think he fell into his own hole where on script, I understand when he said green light, let's fucking do it. I bet on the page he was like, I can make those sequences end so that it has enough momentum to push you all the way through to the end. And then he's so good at the filmmaking stuff, he might be too good, that he gets so excited about the visual effects that those 3 sequences turn into 3 ultimate obstacles for his protagonist. And she ends up dealing with 3 things that feel like 3 different endings. So I feel like it does lose a little bit of steam towards the end, even though I'm still captivated the entire time because he's such a good fucking filmmaker.
I mean, the ending.
That's always how I feel.
The ending was the trailer for the franchise, basically.
Yeah, they did not get picked up, but
yeah, no. I mean, they made one more, and he went even more out there on it. Like, we actually, the funny thing is, like,
2017.
we watched this today, and I was like, I want to watch Covenant again and give it another
Covenant.
look.
How
And,
was it? I haven't seen it.
You can't stream that anywhere either at the moment.
Oh, okay. You can't even rent it.
You can rent it, but you can't stream it. And I'm like, I'm not paying for Covenant. Fuck that.
It's not worth doing it because I thought about doing it tonight because I was like, oh yeah, I forgot they made another one of these.
Yeah.
You're telling me not to though? You're turning me down?
No, give it a watch if you haven't seen it. I have. But
thanks for the recommendation.
I'll tell you what. In this film, and also like in all the Alien films, the production design of everything is amazing. Like some of these ships that they come out with in Alien are some of my favorite fucking starships ever. I love when they do those really gigantic shots. You know that they kind of started at House back in 2001. But it's like the ship is just tiny in the midst of this massive fucking location or this massive
when they first
universe.
get to the planet, right?
Yeah.
And David opens the unbelievable. I know.
Yeah.
That the high school play version of it in New Jersey, fucking awesome.
I remember that.
Yeah. There are a few things that I feel like he was like, Ridley Scott clearly loves movies.
Yeah.
And it's obvious. There is a moment at the beginning and they dropped it. Did you guys notice this? Michael Fassbender's character's name is Dave. Am I right? It's David.
David, yeah.
And there is a computer who speaks to him while he is awake, while everyone else is in hypersleep, and it is the exact voice from 2001. And he's like, "I'm sorry, Dave, I can't do that." I was like, "Come on!" Like, even though I like that you're giving me the illusion, and I love that he's watching Lawrence of Arabia, and when he brings the quote back, "There was nothing in the desert, and no man needs nothing." Like, it's meaningful. But sometimes, again, I feel like he kind of falls into his own traps of the movie thing, and his movies feel like movies. I feel like this movie is a perfect example of that because he kind of leaned into that 100%, and it didn't quite go into a shameless factor for me, where I felt like I was kind of watching Ridley Scott's like, give me a break, let's watch an alien movie. I think he still wanted us to take this seriously, but he kept messing with those tropes, and I kept getting pulled out of it. What did you guys think?
I think the biggest problem is like every single instance of the Alien franchise, and this was theoretically meant to be an Alien prequel. That's what they build it as. But every instance of the Alien franchise, Ripley in the first one beats the monster, puts herself in the pod, story's resolved, off she goes. She may survive, she may not, like off they go. The second one starts with her being found. She gets in the situation again. They beat it, they nuke the planet, they get in the pod, off they go. And resolved.
Nuke the planet.
We finished. Well, we finished
it. Yada yada yada.
And as you do. And but in this one, it was a case of like they got in the situation, they killed the alien, and then got in a ship. But they set up this whole mystery about where they're going next. They're not just going off and like they didn't leave it. Like I feel like this needed an ambiguous ending to the point where it's like, okay, we've got a ship or something. They could have stopped it there and left that whole last sequence out for me.
I completely agree with you. And we're being hard of this movie. Again, this movie's not that bad if you watch it.
No, it's
you just
fun. Watch it.
It's
Dude.
fun.
It's a good time. Yeah.
I wrote down definitely the David planetarium sequence is what I called it, which is when Michael Fassbender has that little globe thing, and it looks like
most expensive shot in the film.
I mean, it has to be for sure.
Beautiful.
It feels
Fucking
like you're
gorgeous.
It's like 100 million polygons in that thing.
What's the thing? What's in the
The
Natural
orrery?
History Museum? In New York, you have the planetarium, the famous planet, the Hayden Planetarium. It feels like it's something that should be in there.
Yeah. But I wish that was in there.
I don't want to speak to Ridley Scott or really any director's intentions, because everybody's intention is to make a good film. So I don't want to pretend like I can speak to their intentions. But I wrote down, I kept writing this thing down. I wrote, here comes Chekhov's Medipod, which is a medical pod. It's like, this is a medical pod. What does this do? Oh, it does this. And I was like, I bet this is going to come up in the film. And then they decided not to bring the weapons into the planet they literally know nothing about, because they accepted the mission sight unseen,
Things like
no
that.
terms.
Things like that, dude.
No, this is a science expedition. Don't bring the weapons. And it's like, the safety's going to be on. I don't plan on using the weapons, but I don't know where I am right now because I just found out about this mission 10 minutes ago. So these things that
but doesn't sound like a $1 trillion mission decision.
But here's my point. I pride our podcast on being a positive film podcast, obviously, but also that we are feeling first. Part of the reason we started this podcast is we hated critics. I hated critics. I think you agreed that just the way they're talking, their feelings had nothing to do with what they were saying. They were just like, this film did this blank, blank, blank. And it was like, but what did you like the movie? You know what I mean? The movie was fine. I felt okay about this movie, but things like don't bring your weapons in, you're in a, we just talked about Ryan Johnson and Derek, I'm going to mess up his name, Chian French, who had the audience, they knew what they were doing to the audience the whole time. Ridley Scott is a brilliant filmmaker. Alien, and then you have Aliens. He worked with James Cameron through the whole series. Like, this is a brilliant filmmaker. And he doesn't care about the alien here. He doesn't care. Sorry, he doesn't care about the human. He doesn't care about the audience here. Don't bring your weapons onto the strange planet that you don't know anything about. This goes back to Dark Knight Rises with, like, don't do that to us. Like, okay, if you want people to be, no, just bring the weapons and have whatever's out there beat the weapons. Like, don't not bring the weapons. That's just stupid. The audience is going to watch this movie and go, that's stupid. Every single time. It's just the truth. So the reason that he does that, these are tiny, tiny decisions that make your brilliant filmmaking ability turn into a problematic film. Like literally like that. One decision immediately takes your film from an A, and the highest it can possibly be is a B+ because you made a stupid decision.
Dude, I completely agree. This is why, like, all right, we're talking about art here, we're talking about cinema, so like let's only focus on that. But I think it applies to all sorts of different aspects of life. There are principles that have relativity to them, but the principles are important. You are not supposed to solve characters' obstacles for them. That's a perfect example. That is one of those moments where I was like, why did you even have to comment on that? You could have solved that problem visually, cinematically, and I know he's got the fucking skills to do it because he's a goddamn genius.
Yeah.
I wanted to see them struggle with the fact that their weapons, whatever, didn't work, were overcompensated, or something beat them. There were a million ways that they could have solved that problem without fucking talking about it in a tiny little pre-meeting. Oh, are you bringing that gun with you? So there are too many moments like that in this movie for me to question. Like, it just confuses me sometimes when Ridley Scott like does things like that, because I know he's capable of doing more than that, and I just don't know where that fucking shit comes from. He didn't write the screenplay.
Damon Lindelof of Lost co-wrote the screenplay.
Well, that explains it.
Dave.
Because ultimately, where does this let's talk about this really fast. Let's get into it. Where does the controversy for this film come from within the Alien fan universe? I think it comes from the discrepancy over how the aliens actually came into existence and whether or not there was enough kick-ass action in this movie to justify the birth of the last 15 seconds of this movie. I mean, where you get to finally see this thing.
I can give you two good examples. People went in expecting an alien film, and they got a highbrow sci-fi action about man's search for his origins and obsession with immortality instead.
Yeah.
And that wasn't what they went in there for, so it was kind of like a broken promise. And also, who the protagonist is actually confusing, because I don't know if you watch this really closely.
Ding, 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 ding.
The protagonist is David.
Wait, okay, Dave, get out of my notes. Dave, get out of my notes.
Dave, I think you're a narcissist for believing that, first of all.
Wait,
just because
Dave and I are sharing notes really quick.
You're totally right. Get in there.
Dave, so I wrote this, which I imagine you agree based on what you said. I said the only three-dimensional character is the robot.
No, I don't agree. You're a fucker.
Get the fuck out of here. I know Noomi Rapace is so close to being three-dimensional, but she's not Ridley. So what is it that separates Ridley and Noomi Rapace is something to think about. The other thing I would say is this. There are basically, I hate platitudes, so I hate when somebody's like, there's two types of people in this world, but there's really two ways of approaching sci-fi. One is we discover everything with the characters. So the characters don't know anything and we discover with them. The other way is they know everything, but the audience isn't told it. So we have to play catch up as they go along. This movie is the first. They don't know anything. So what you said is like, this is about man's quest. You're right. And they do say that later in the movie. And actually that's such a good idea. But Noomi Rapace and her husband are not three-dimensional when they introduce that. So I don't care about it yet. What do you think about that thought?
Do you let me throw this question in there too so we can stir around with it. Do you think we were supposed to have David's point of view the entire time and Ridley
No, we were supposed to have Numi's.
You think we were? Because I'm not sure, to be honest with you. This is my second time seeing this, and I'm not quite. She is literally the first point of view we have. Yeah. First shot is her banging in that cave, or after the little beginning prologue. First shot is her. So I know what you mean. It seems like we're supposed to be following her, and she is clearly in our view most of the movie. I mean, but David is the only one that we actually get to see thinking. She acts. David thinks. So I'm not quite sure. What do you think,
I mean, in 2001, you see the apes, and they're not the protagonists of the film.
True.
Good point.
Wait, but so talk to me about...
It's a device to get them to the point. I think this whole film.
Do you think there were two protagonists?
I mean,
do you think there are two because they end up going together at the end?
It's possible. But I think this whole movie was more about, he focused more on the android's journey than the alien, because I know he's specifically said in interviews he wanted to get away from the aliens, and nobody responded to that. That's why they're back in the second one.
All right, then this is why it didn't completely succeed for me. If that was what he was trying to do, because he didn't give, I know this might sound obvious, but because he didn't give the android any kind of ultimate conflict other than getting his head ripped off, then it kind of stopped for me when that happened. I was kind of like, what the fuck are we going to do now that they're conduit between the aliens and them, he just got ripped in half. And then he just comes back kind of magically. He just starts talking to her again.
What is his energy source?
Later.
What is his energy source?
How the fuck is he communicating?
Who's powering him? Is his power center actually in his head and not his body? Did he need his body at all?
Yeah, because when they did the same thing to Bishop, she had to wire him up. Like, she had to power him to do that.
I know, but see, that would have bothered me less had he been communicating the entire time. Is the fact that we left him and we went with just her. I thought that was the moment where he was going to start to meld the two protagonists, and yet we left him and we went just with her, and then he just comes back very safely and comfortably at the very end. Look out, he's coming to get you, right when the alien was coming to attack her. It was a little too perfect, and it gave me that same feeling like, all right, I'm watching a movie. Because if he had been speaking to her the entire time and he was actually... I know this is a trope with sci-fi, but when it's pulled off well. If he had been speaking to her the entire time because he was actually afraid he was going to die, or that he wasn't going to get out of that ship that he was buried in, there would have been some kind of thing that would have brought them together instead of just function. They got together because of function, which didn't do it for me. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, going back to what Jeff said, there are only two types of people in the world. And he's right. There are two types of people in the world. There are people that just run in a straight line, and people that turn right and run out from in front of the fucking thing that's about to fall on them.
So, is that a Game of Thrones throwback to the Battle of the Bastards?
No, I mean, but honestly,
it's zigzag, Tom, and zigzag.
It's one of the biggest controversies in this film.
Yeah, Dave, when you see shit like that, are you like, because I mean, again, the visual effects are astounding. Yeah. Like everything that's happening in that sequence is just like, motherfucker, this guy is a pro. And yet he puts something in, I mean, but then he puts a sequence in there like that where you're like, give me a
justify
break,
it
dude.
in explaining, like they justified it later in discussions by explaining that like some people in those situations do just blindly panic and run in a straight direction. They don't have the plan making skills when they're panicked. But if you have to go back and explain something after your movie, after it's been ridiculed, you failed.
Yeah. And didn't they literally have her say the line? This is Charlize Theron's character. We're talking about people, Vickers. Yeah. She literally says the line early on, I take every precaution for safety. Or she's like, because she lives in like a lifeboat.
Yeah.
So there it was like a contradiction that I didn't think quite, I don't know. I think there are too many moments in this movie where you feel people are contradicting themselves for the sake of visual spectacle that keeps it from being a great movie, but it's still fun. And if you like the Alien world and the Alien franchise, I agree with you, Dave. I think he ended up making more of a dramatic kind of take on the human saga of trying to figure out where we came from, but it's still worth watching. It's unbelievably gorgeous.
Yeah.
And I still feel like the acting is fantastic.
There's a really brutal med pod scene in the middle of it. But I think my biggest takeaway from this is if you're on my exploration team, you're watching this as the safety video.
Yeah.
Do not take your helmet off and don't poke the fucking alien snakes.
That's right.
Yeah.
Don't take your fucking helmet off, dude. Yes. They weren't worried about pathogens at all. Like, I don't know. You guys.
Yeah, this guy's a scientist that literally traveled across the solar system over 3 years and in 30 seconds went, what are the oxygen levels? This helmet's coming off. Yeah. I can't even take my helmet off now during COVID and the air is fine outside.
He's a helmet denier.
He's a helmet denier. Anyway, all right. Any
Jeff,
final
you're
thoughts?
Totally right, dude.
Any final thoughts?
I mean, one piece of wisdom: when the android starts quoting philosophy, everybody the fuck out of the pool.
Yeah. And if you're a scientist, every decision he makes is with his dick. He's a terrible scientist, and he didn't go to school for science because he's not a scientist. Come on with that. He's like, oh, what are the oxygen levels? Mask off. What about you're in a foreign space station. What if they can't even detect? It doesn't matter. Okay. Anyway.
Yeah. No. Not the reason. You're right. Yeah.
What I would take away from our podcast is the things that tear us apart the most are movies that are so close. Because just bad movies we don't care about, and good movies are easy. So it's like the reason we're saying all this stuff is because like it's anyway. I don't have the answers. You don't.
I do have one final criticism. How did they not show us Idris Elba and Charlize Theron having sex? That would have been like, come on, are you kidding me? That would have been incredible. We didn't get to see any of that.
It's not Family Guy. It's not like, oh, we need some boobs. And it's like, there are boobs. Oh, yeah? Oh, yeah, we got a movie.
Yeah, no.
It's not the Age of Innocence.
It's not the Age of Innocence. All right.